This video was sponsored by Kawaii Company. If you've been a part of or around Japanese culture, either as a Japanese or non-Japanese person, you have heard this word.
Kawaii. Kawaii. Kawaii.
The word kawaii is a word originally derived from the phrase kawahayushi, which means one's face is aglow, i.e. blushing. The word originally was coined in Lady Murasaki's 11th century novel, The Tale of Genji, to mean pitiable or docile. But over the course of several centuries, the meaning of the word soon transitioned to mean shine or lovable, but mostly cute. While some historians can trace Japan's fascination with cuteness back to the popularity of the Netsuke charms in the Edo period, it's usually agreed on that the kawaii aesthetic truly began at the dawn of the 20th century. It began to take root in the early Showa period with the popularity of imported cartoon shorts starring cute characters like Betty Boop. It's not until the post-war era, however, that the kawaii ideal that we know today began to form. It could have either began with the art of openly gay illustrator Raine Naito, whose drawings of babyface girls and the usage of fruit and animals created the kawaii style that we see as fashionable or chic. You can also point to the old master himself, Osamu Tezuka. His Disney-inspired art style helped set the foundation by which future manga and anime would base their styles off of, influencing artists in both shonen, shoujo, and seinen spheres to design characters that would look appealing. The creation of the kawaii style as a means to entertain. Kawaii as an aesthetic is a broad application in Japanese society. It is seen in its fashion, its media, its sports, its advertising, and its infrastructure. Aesthetician Soichi Masubuchi wrote in his 1994 work Kawaii Syndrome that cute and neat have taken precedence over the former Japanese aesthetics of beautiful and refined. Now, I'm not Japanese, so of course there's going to be some nuances to the cultural aesthetic of kawaii that I will miss due to my status as an outsider. One thing I do notice is that most forms of kawaii in the modern age are connected to one driving force: capitalism. From when the Sanrio founder learned that he sold more sandals if there were cute characters painted on them, kawaii culture mostly exists as a way to move money. Sure, kawaii art and culture can exist for its own sake, but the style is the most prevalent form to get people to spend that green. Fashion trends have been dictated on cuteness, magical girls have mascots to better expand merchandising, light novel authors are often pushed to create cute girl characters solely so that they can make for a more attractive cover for potential buyers. Local prefectures spend thousands on creating cute mascot characters solely to drive up tourism. An entire subgenre of games has been created that revolves around bleeding gamers' wallets dry solely so that they can get rare photos of their favorite anime girl. Cutie pies are the business, and business is good. Kawaii does appear to still be the dominant cultural aesthetic in Japan, even after all these years. But like with any culture, a counterculture is always ready to emerge.
KYOTO ビデオ。
そういや君、名前なんていうの？
あたちタマラ。お母さんはあたちのことタマって呼ぶの。ひってムカつくで。だからちゃんとタマラって呼んでね。
This is Tamala. Tamala is a cat. Tamala is young, adorable, approaches the world with a naive curiosity, and has the speech patterns of a toddler. Tamala also smokes cigarettes, engages in petty crime, flaunts her sex appeal, gets tattoos, and curses like a sailor. Tamala is a punk cat. One day, Tamala gets bored of living in her vast, highly commercialized metropolis on Cat Earth in the feline galaxy and takes off in her rocket ship, against the wishes of her hard-living gamer human mother. Tamala is a punk cat in space. Tamara's goal is to reach her original birthplace, Orion, and see if she could find her real birth mother there. But after her ship hits a meteor and she's forced to make a crash landing, she finds herself on the planet Q on the outskirts of a town called Hate City, named after the internal strife between the city's residents of cats and dogs. There, Tamala hooks up with a young male cat named Michelangelo and declares him to be her boyfriend.
ねえ発情期どうしてるのもあもあちゃん。私今年2度目なの。
僕モアモアじゃないよ。ミケランジェロって言うんだ。
So the naive, childish Tamala and the educated and cultivated Michelangelo form a relationship. A relationship that will take both parties to new places and have them learn and experience new things. Interesting things. Terrible, horrifying, unimaginable things. 2002's Tamala 2010, A Punk Cat in Space, is something that's existence really took me by surprise. You see, the anime fandom in the aughts, the era I came of age in, was all about dictating you watch a certain canon of anime if you wanted to go deeper into the medium beyond what was airing on Toonami. Stuff that was a little headier or relatively more mature, but still overall accessible. And of those recommendation charts of anime I viewed and let govern my DVD purchases, Tamala 2010 was nowhere to be found. This is an anime movie that completely passed out of all knowledge, even during a period where otaku were trying to present themselves as having more developed tastes. My only guess is that this film is too spicy for even some of the most seasoned anime vets, but also accessibility certainly was a factor. Tamala actually was part of that early wave of anime film hitting the art house circuit in the early aughts, which got a surprising amount of press in American newspapers. But it only got a sub-only DVD release in 2003 that, as far as I know, has remained out of print since then. But when has accessibility stopped anime fans, aka some of the scurviest dogs of the 7 seas? Whatever buzz Tamala 2010 may have had in the larger anime fandom quickly vanished if it was ever there at all. On top of not getting any re-releases in home video or streaming, I had to use the internet archive to watch this. This seems like a title that is so obtuse, so alternative, so convention-breaking to the max, that it only would appeal to the most niche of niche anime heads. The kind of title that you would have to be in the know to know, you know? I get that. Tamala 2010 is not an easy watch. It's structured weird, it moves slow, it almost demands to try your patience at times, but at the same time, I think it has something it really wants to say. So before you take one look at this and have the nasty word pretentious cross your lips, hear me out. There's more to this film than just a punk cat in space. I would even say that this is one of the best anime films that has a punk cat in space. Join me. Come in with an open mind and heart. Tamala would appreciate you for doing so.
Ciao.
Information on the overall background of Tamala was sparse when doing my research. Most of this information comes from translated old web pages via the Wayback Machine and a lone post from IMDb's since deleted forums detailing a Q&A session with the film's 2 directors. So let's start there. Tamara 2010 was the brainchild of t.o.L, or Trees of Life. They are a multimedia creative duo consisting of a man and a woman, only known by the names Kei and Kuno. Very little is known about their history before Tamala. All we do know about them is that they are musicians first and foremost, and they broke into the industry around 1996 when they were one of the people who helped launch the indie music label Lemonade. This is noteworthy because that project was the brainchild of music legend and ex-Japan guitarist Hide, so already the two had good connections. Judging from the style of music they make, t.o.L were a part of the Shibuya Kei, or Shibuya style genre of music. Basically, a subgenre that was big in the 90s to early 2000s that was very sample heavy and leaned into the influences from lounge, bossa nova, 60s sunshine pop, and jazz to create its own unique sound. If the names Pizzicato 5, Cornelius, or Fantastic Plastic Machine ring any bells to you, that's Shibuya Kei. But obviously, t.o.L had bigger dreams and ambitions. Shortly after they formed Lemonade, they got an idea for a film, one that was going to be solely funded by them. They were also going to direct, write the screenplay, collaborate on character designs, and compose all the music for it. Helping them out would be animator Kentaro Nemoto, who was the sole animator on this film. For this reason, it took Tamala 2010 a staggering 4 years to get made. According to Nemoto, the production was mostly him being fed information about the story and scenes bit by bit, which he would then animate. Animation on the film was done entirely in a linear fashion, and Nemoto often had no idea what would be coming next as he animated. The trade-off to this was that t.o.L gave Nemoto unlimited creative freedom in how he approached his scenes. t.o.L's contribution to the animation were just designing the cast and overall look and feel for the film. The actual boarding and animation was something they were completely hands-off on. Another area where t.o.L didn't have a hand in was the 3D effects for the movie. That was done by a small team consisting of Motoko Kashiwagi, Kenji Okada, and Keisuke Shimizu, with direction helmed by Michiru Tsumoto. And if any of these names cause you to draw blanks, don't worry. For nearly all the crew members, Tamala 2010 was their only credit. The only exception being Kenji Okada, since he has CGI credits on some Pokemon films. I can only guess that some of those names might be aliases. You see what I have to work with here. So how Tamala got made and its history are mostly lost in the ether as of the time of this recording. But why the hell should I care? I may be an anime historian, but production history will do us no good here. What really matters in this video is the product being sold. So how is Tamala as an actual movie? The better question would be, how could I even talk about this film as if it were a regular ass movie? To give you an idea of what exactly we've got here, I am going to briefly summarize the first 10 minutes of how this movie plays out. So after the logo of t.o.L's production company and this title screen that will be important later, we cut to 15th century Italy where a mysterious male cat is delivering messages. One of them being a scroll with a cryptic message and the logo for the corporation, Kawaii Company. We then cut to a series of title cards that set the film in the future year of 2010 and establishes that the aforementioned Kawaii Company has evolved into a colossal conglomerate that controls nearly all the total world GDP. We then cut to a slow tracking shot of a CGI cyberpunk city being beset by seemingly endless rain. The city is gray, rusty, and gloomy, and the only color that is around come from the advertisements for Kawaii Company products. And over this, an unseen man talks about how the city of Tokyo has been nothing but rainy for the past few days, and how that's beginning to change how people interact with each other.
みんな何かを待っていた。みんなそういう目をしている。下から斜めにちょっとだけ見上げる感じで。
And right when the rain begins to stop and the sun begins to peek out from the clouds, he says this.
猫は孤独に生きる。そして雨が降るように猫は死ぬ。
We get a title, and we soon zoom in to our eponymous heroine waking up. Tamala leaves her apartment and walks down the heavily commercialized streets of Cat Earth. Billboards are everywhere, a giant Colonel Sanders marches the streets with an axe embedded into his forehead shouting fast food slogans, children are doodling the Kawaii Company logo onto the sidewalk, and the mysterious male cat from the cold open appears to be watching Tamala. Tamala then pirouettes into a rocket ship and blasts off away from Earth. Her spaceship drifts by Earth's orbit, which is cluttered with satellites with more ads on them. Inside, Tamala calmly plays a shoot-'em-up while smoking a cig. After she loses a boss fight, her spaceship loses power and she has to call for repair service, which she pays via a Kawaii Company credit card. The repairman immediately gets abducted by a ghost, forcing Tamala to make the repairs herself. The same ghost then attempts to carry her off, but Tamala scares it off by saying her first line of dialogue. She then gets pushed into the void of space where she witnesses the planets aligning. The next scene, she's back playing her video game No Worse for Wear, which is soon interrupted by a call from her mother.
私、オリオン座に行くの。私、クソガキじゃないの。タマラなの。
Now, it's a little hard to convey when I summarized it, but while it does feel like a lot of stuff happens in that time frame, it also feels like a lot doesn't happen. Tamala 2010 moves very slow. Even though this is a film with dialogue, there's a lot of emphasis on the visual image. It likes to linger on scenes, have the film go a few minutes without the characters saying a single line of dialogue, and sometimes not even a single note of music. The deliberately deliberate pacing of Tamala is not done to purposely alienate the audience. It instead feels like you are meant to be completely immersed into this world. This extends to its overall plot structure. While Tamala has the goal to get to Orion after she crashes onto planet Q, most of the film's runtime takes place there. For more than half of Tamala 2010's runtime, it's mostly just Tamala and Michelangelo hanging out. They visit a museum, they go bowling, Tamala gets a tattoo, Tamala shoplifts a bunch of clothes, they attend a concert, Tamala whips the audience up into a religious fervor with her sexy dancing. It would appear that this film is just a series of scenes where stuff just happens. But please don't take that as a slight against this film. I think in order to fully appreciate Tamala 2010, you cannot approach it like you would a linear story. You should approach it like how you would a poem or a painting. Let it all wash over you. If there is an element to this movie that gives some connectivity and flow, it's the soundtrack. I can tell that music is the primary passion of t.o.L because the soundtrack is such an overwhelming presence. It's also a display of t.o.L's range of musicianship because the tracks can range from poppy bossa nova to filthy funk rock to haunting ambience. The music as a through line is needed because the film doesn't just stick around with Tamala and Michelangelo. The film also jumps around to other events and characters happening at the same time. We'll sometimes check in on the closest thing this movie has to a villain, Kentaros, a bisexual German shepherd sadist who dresses up like a motorcycle cop who spends his day either cruising for cute sailor boys or sexually tormenting his mouse sex slave, Penelope. There's also two transgender sex workers acting as a Greek chorus for the various goings-on in Hate City.
でもね、ダイアンも言ってたの。お母さんからの手紙ね、届かないんだって。そうなんだ。私手紙書かないからわかんない。あんた字書けんの？うるさいわね、このブス。
We get a cryptic countdown on a computer as a group of Caddy and Company spaceships encroach their way into Planet Q's orbit, and then we'll sometimes cut to seemingly unrelated footage in the CGI city at the beginning where we see a giant robot Catwoman riding an endless escalator. When watching this film for the first time, some people might be inclined to use the word meandering or pointless when bearing witness to it all. I counter that by saying, you need to learn about avant-garde anime. The word avant-garde originated as the French military term advance garde to describe the reconnaissance unit who scouted ahead of the main army. It would later evolve into a term to describe the early socialist movement and its followers. But at the dawn of the 20th century, it took on a new form to describe the stratum of artists and thinkers who developed new experimental concepts of what could be done in art. Avant-garde literally means those who are forging the path ahead for future artists. Today, we often use the term avant-garde as an adjective to describe unconventional and challenging works. It has gotten to the point where people almost mistake it for its own genre of weird stuff. But avant-garde is a far broader term. It is used to describe numerous modern art movements that sprang up in the early 20th century, and it's not confined to the world of paintings and sculptures, but also literature, theater, music, film, and of course, animation.
Hello, Emily.
Avant-garde anime has been around since the art form was beginning to be codified in the early 60s, the most notable being the abstract independent short films of Yoji Kuri, his work employing a naive surrealism mixed with black comedy, eschewing the child-friendly nature anime had at the time. Kuri's work would lay the groundwork for future experimental anime films that also pushed the boundaries of the medium. Osamu Tezuka himself would also ambitiously pursue forward-thinking methodologies to prevent himself from getting complacent with his success on TV. The films of Kuri were also a part of Japan's growing underground counterculture, witnessing a country undergoing massive urbanization and transformation into a more materialistic society. The youth of Japan found themselves turning towards radical leftist politics and rebellion in the face of a conservative American-friendly government, and one method they did rebel was by embracing the alternative arts. A lot of Japan's classic experimental films came out of its counterculture, such as Toshio Matsumoto's Funeral Parade of Roses, which loosely adapts the Oedipus Rex tragedy set in Tokyo's underground gay scene with a trans woman as the film's tragic protagonist. but more importantly is throw away your books, rally in the streets. Shuji Terayama's provocative cinematic outburst against a materialistic society that demands conformity at all costs. Through brutal and bizarre imagery and editing, it shirks the traditional 3-act structure in favor of a loose pseudo-documentary style to better frame the protagonist's disillusionment with a capitalist society. So, what does all this have to do with Tamala 2010? A lot, actually. Tamala 2010 is meant to embody the counterculture. It's in its visual DNA. While the visuals might harken back to Tezuka's TV work, with its black and white simplistic cuteness and futurism, another inspiration it has visually would be Junko Mizuno's Pure Trance, a late 90s shoujo manga that merged the kawaii aesthetics of the period with grindhouse-style sex and violence, a perfect counter-reaction to typical cuteness. Tamala's entire form takes from countercultural icons of the past. The main story of a secret cult becoming a mass corporation is lifted straight from Thomas Pynchon's postmodern classic, The Crying of Lot 49. The statue in the middle of Hate City is a naked reference to The Happy Prince, a fairy tale written by famed anti-establishment gadabout Oscar Wilde. And Kentaros' entire vibe is centered around not just influential gay artist Tom of Finland, but also the queer artwork of kawaii aesthetics godfather Rune Naito. In a way, you can consider the film to be a tribute to both his cultural and countercultural works. The countercultural attitude extends to the people in Tamala 2010. Most of the characters we focus on are people who exist outside of the quote-unquote norm of society. While we know about the politics of Hate City through sporadic newscasts and radio broadcasts throughout the film, it's the trans women sex workers on the cat side that give it texture, giving us insight on how they're outsiders not just because of their queerness or occupation, but also because it's implied they fraternize with dogs as well.
あのブラックの可愛い子、あの子だけじゃないの。セーラーのもっと可愛い子も連れ歩いてるの。あの変態。羨ましい。
Kentaros, despite his villainous behavior, is also very much a sexual minority. It's reflected in both his taste in men and his ultimate fate. For even though this German Shepherd is a violent thug with an intimidating aura, it's not enough to protect him and his boyfriend from getting horrifically gay bashed by a group of cats in a riot. And even after all that he's done leading up to that moment, the aftermath is played for haunting tragedy.
バカだな、ケンタウロス。俺ここにいるのに。そうだ。ピクニック行こう、ケンタウロス。ここがクソ猫どもがおとなしくなったら森にジャーキー持って。
Even Michelangelo, despite being the token normie, is also a person who exists on the outside. He states that he's not interested in pursuing a mate and would rather spend his time watching Clint Eastwood movies. And in a blink and you miss it scene, you learn that he's also in massive debt. The sun by which these outsiders revolve around is Tamala, the embodiment of the youth in all its innocence and rebellion. Tamala represents the youth counterculture because she is the freest out of everybody in her vicinity. She is untethered by any pressure to conform to societal norms. She thumbs her nose at her only authority figure, her adopted mother, and then always takes the opportunity to badmouth her.
あたちのファッキンアナコンダお母さんはあたちにおやつくれないの。ペルシャの野郎と差別しやがって。
She acts and speaks in a very unladylike manner. She never feigns interest in the things that bore her. If she wants to do something, she'll just do it. Tamala is a rebel in all definitions of the word. She's a punk cat through and through. This is contrasted by her overall cute appearance. Tamala's design feels like the example of kawaii. Her big head, her Bambi eyes, her childish way of speaking, which is doubled down on by having her be voiced by Hisayo Mochizuki, who's best known for voicing Yachiru in Bleach.
ママちゃん、あたちちっちゃい時おっきな火事見たの。すごい日で空が真っ赤だったの。ワクワクしたの。
But this is what makes her the perfect countercultural icon. She projects the image of kawaii culture docility while subverting it through her actions. And she can get away with it because she looks so adorably guiltless. She's just a kitty. She doesn't know any better. However, while Tamala may be the perfect symbol of kawaii counterculture, there's one thing to remember. Sometimes the counterculture can become just the culture. So that part about Tamala and Moi Moi just spending time in Hate City screwing around, that's only half the film. And I mean literally half, because around the 45-minute mark, the film takes a turn. The two cats are enjoying a picnic together out in the forest, and then all of a sudden, they are attacked by Kentaros, who wishes to make an example of them. They try to get away, but are cornered by the dog up a tree. Michelangelo ends up being a yellow belly and leaves Tamala to a grisly fate, where she is eaten alive by Kentaros. Michelangelo, bearing witness to this horrific crime, runs away and cries out of sorrow and guilt. A new countdown starts on the computer, and the robot cat keeps ascending up the escalator, this time without a head or arm. Cut to 22 years later in Shanghai, China, and we are attending a lecture by Professor Nominos. And before I get into the details, I have to say that this is a big problem with the movie. Most of the latter half is this professor giving his lengthy expository lectures, explaining what Tamala 2010 and its main character's deal is about. It is a heavy-handed way to deliver information in a visual medium, and some people might find this an even bigger slog than the first part of the film. But whatever, I've seen this work in other anime before, and what the professor is spelling out does make a lot of what this anime wants to say come into focus. The topic is about Caddy & Company. Through numerous corporate mergers, they have become the ultimate corporate monopoly, being the provider of products ranging from food to blue jeans to household objects. It's gotten to the point where they are so big that their reach has gone beyond Earth, and Caddy & Company is now doing corporate mergers with entire worlds. Caddy & Company traces all the way back as a courier service founded in the 15th century, being used as a way for members of the persecuted Minerva cult to deliver messages. Centuries passed, and that courier service grew into the corporation we now see today, and soon a pattern emerges in the form of a company mascot. Throughout history, Tamala has appeared on the packaging and advertising for numerous Caddy & Company products. She appears on a matchbook in Meiji-era Cat Japan, and 100 years later as the star of a commercial for forgetfulness medicine. Tamala never ages. She never seems to die. She appears to be immortal through the power of marketing.
あの娘の足跡を追い続けて黒々とした巨大な陰謀の歴史に出会っただけじゃ。
But before the professor can reveal more, a fire breaks out and everyone in the room is consumed by the flames, but not before showing that the professor is an aged Michelangelo.
もう一度会いたい。タマラ。タマラとは何者だったんじゃろう。
Tamala is not just a subversive figure for the counterculture, she is also the perfect corporate mascot. She is multifaceted enough that each part of her personality is gold for advertisers. She has cuteness, she has sex appeal, she's an ingenue, she's a rebel without a cause. Everything that makes her an underground counterculture icon also makes her the perfect symbol for consumption. Wouldn't you like to be cute like Tamala? Wouldn't you want to be sexy like Tamala? Wouldn't you want to be as rebellious and free like Tamala? This is nothing groundbreaking. If history has taught us anything, is that the culture will eventually catch up to the avant-garde, and soon traits of the counterculture eventually end up as part of the capitalist norm. It is the life cycle of culture within the capitalist system. Ornette Coleman pioneered the discordant subgenre known as free jazz, which inspired Miles Davis to record his groundbreaking magnum opus Bitches Brew, which inspired the experimental but more accessible jazz fusion movement, which then inspired Kenny G. That's why Picasso paintings now appear on coffee mugs. That's why Stravinsky's Rite of Spring soundtracked a Disney movie. That's why Reggio's Koyaanisqatsi gets referenced in a trailer for a Grand Theft Auto game nearly 25 years later. Kawaii culture is said to have actually begun as a way for schoolgirls in the 1970s to defy familial expectations to grow up fast and become a homemaker. But as soon as Hello Kitty hit the shelves, that rebellion was immediately sold back to them tenfold. Shoot, Tamala wasn't even the first subversive kawaii character that was around at that time. Even when Nekojiro dressed up her bleak childhood and nihilistic humor with subversively cutesy drawings, that did not stop companies from wanting to break down her door to merchandise it to hell and back. And look what happened there. But Trees of Life do appear to be aware of this. At least, I think they do. On their website, back when it was still accessible, a lot of emphasis is placed on the merchandising. It really wants to push you to buy Tamala shirts, books, and figures, and it's also detailing plans for future Tamala merch, such as a Tamala fashion line or a Tamala manga. Now, they could have actually just been signing as many merch deals as they could in order to get more funding for more Tamala projects, evidence supported by the fact that some of that Tamala merch is out there in the wild. At the same time, it still works on a meta level. t.o.L knows their countercultural icon is just waiting to be merchandised, so they beat them to the punch. Tamada's critique of the cold machinery of capitalism does not end there though. So after the lecture, we cut back to the present day where we see characters like Michelangelo and Kentaro suddenly becoming aware of Tamada's presence on packaging. The next night, Michelangelo soon gets a midnight visit from the shambling corpse of his future self. He would like to continue his lecture.
The
reason why the Minerva cult was so persecuted was because they were a band of murderous fanatics obsessed with sacrificing people, members or not, to their goddess. They changed their name to Caddy & Company to rebrand as a courier service to better hide their illicit activities. But they soon learned that there was far more money and power to be gained through controlling information than through ritual sacrifice. Thus, this led to their ultimate plan: gain as much control of various industries throughout history so that they can conquer the world through the power of capitalism. You with me so far? But like many capitalist ventures, Caddy & Company are never satisfied. Even with Earth under their thumb of industry, there are still other worlds out there left to conquer. So they created a robot in the image of t.o.L, their goddess of destruction and rebirth. t.o.L's prime directive is twofold. One, she sows chaos and discord in societies by controlling the dreams of children through the fiber optics which implants negative thoughts into them. And two, through her own parallel universe, propagate the cycle of death and rebirth, but only as a means of consumption. Essentially, re-engineering the deity Shiva into an engine of endless capitalist growth.
それは物を破壊せよ、物を変え、そして物を破壊せよ。さすれば世界は無限に進化する。ミネルヴァ教イコールキャティ&カンパニーのクソスローガンじゃ。
But that wasn't all they created. One night on the Orion system, a great fire killed 200,000 newborn kittens. But there was one survivor, one that could rewrite t.o.L's code and potentially break the cycle. That kitten was Tamala. She was born 100 years ago and remains perpetually the age of 1 year old, explaining her childlike innocence. And because she was eaten, that counts as a sacrifice, which means she was able to be reborn as Caddy & Company's new marketing icon. Capitalism is an evil machine that exploits societal ills for its own gain and rebuilds society in its own image upon the destruction of the world it violently replaced. And if it sees any potential threat to that cycle, it will also destroy it and repackage it into a symbol upholding its values. It just goes to show you, capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself.
びっくりした。
The thing is though, Tamada seems to be aware of her ultimate fate. Due to her permanent age, she still has visions of t.o.L in her world. Her performance at the concert seems to be her unconsciously reenacting a Minerva cult ritual, and she also asks Michelangelo this question.
もあもあちゃん、あたちとっても美味しいのよ。食べたい？
We later see Tamala after being eaten where she's sharing a limbo in between worlds with t.o.L, and through a conversation with her, she realizes that this whole thing is nothing more than a charade that needs to be destroyed.
そしてね、あたち踊り続けるの。Fucking goodbye.
Through her own will, Tamala escapes that limbo and arrives back into the real world, but not before delivering the male cat some choice words.
お前もう消えるの。ぐずぐずしてるとぶっ殺すぞ。
With her newfound freedom and goal ahead of her, Tamala forges ahead to Orion, but she won't be alone. Mirroring her escape is Penelope, finally escaping Kentaros' apartment and joining Tamala, who accepts her as a friend. And that's kinda where the film ends. Yeah, aside from the story being told mostly through a series of lectures, another big problem with this movie is that it seems to be mostly set up for future installments. Indeed, there was plans for there to be a Tamala trilogy with future works titled Tamala and Orion, which would continue where this movie leaves off, and Tatla, which would provide more insight on who Tatla was before she became a pawn for Caddy and Company. There was also plans for a TV series called Tamala in Space, but nothing has ever manifested beyond the title. t.o.L were able to return to the Tamala well through 2 short films released in 2007, Tamala on Parade and Tamala's Wild Party. As of right now, the 2 musicians seem to be working on another Tamala film called Tamala 2030, A Punk Cat in the Dark. You can follow their Twitter, where they are occasionally posting updates on how that film is going, showing that this is still a very independent production. Tamala 2010, A Punk Cat in Space is definitely an art for art's sake anime. This is an anime with the soul of the nonconformist, the rebel, the punk, all dolled up in the hyper-capitalist kawaii fashion. But it does more than just subvert and be self-aware of its commodity status. It also shows that there might be a way out. They don't fully explore that, sadly, since that was clearly saved for the sequel, but what we do get shows us that escape from constant commodification is possible, even if you are just a whittle pussycat. You just make the most soft and marketable specimen a part of something that's completely unmarketable. If you need an anime, or hell, a film, outside the norm and are willing to get lost in some cute and confusing images about the hellish march capitalism takes towards endless growth, then I would recommend Tamala, a true punk anime to the end.
ショッキングな一日が始まりますね。
Thank you all for watching. If you like this video or want to support this channel, please donate to my Patreon. Each dollar can give you early access to my videos as they come out, as well as keep the channel running a bit more smoothly. You can also subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, or just like this video. Either way, you'll be helping me out. That's all for now. See you for the next round of tapes.